The movie opens with a wealthy German family, John, his wife Esther, and their two children, Alba and Philip, arriving in France for their annual summer retreat. However, this time the streets are filled with protesters demanding higher wages as inflation soars. Despite the unrest, the family reaches their estate, a home that once belonged to Esther's parents. After settling in and soaking up the sun, John and Esther share an intimate moment, but their tranquility is interrupted when Esther hears creaking sounds above them, likely from critters. Meanwhile, at La Fontaine, a bustling restaurant, a group of servers are chatting and working when one of them notices the guests from below. They turn to a woman named Theodora and ask for her opinion. She glances over and responds, "Not rich enough." Later that evening, John and his family dine at La Fontaine, where Alba entertains them with magic card tricks, delighting her parents. During dinner, Esther receives a work-related call. She runs her digital marketing firm for IT companies and seems frustrated as she speaks to her assistant. Theodora, carrying the towel basket, takes notice of the heated conversation. Shortly after, Theodora rushes out of the restaurant and hops onto the back of a man's bike. They ride through the streets until the man suddenly stops, pulls out a knife. He makes a cut in her arm. Meanwhile, after finishing their meal and a few drinks, John and his family head back to their estate. As they drive, John muses about the distinct lavender aroma and architectures unique to France. Distracted, he fails to notice someone at the side of the road until it's too late. John immediately gets out to check on the injured person. Upon inspecting her wound, which looks serious, John suggests taking her to a hospital. However, since he was driving under the influence, Esther advises against it. Instead, she asks for her name. She reveals her name as Theodora, and Esther offers to take her to their home, assuring her they have a first aid kit that should suffice. Theodora hesitates, insisting a hospital would be better, but eventually agrees when Esther points out how far away it is. Upon arriving home, Esther immediately retrieves the first aid kit and tends to Theodora's wound. While sitting in the living room area, Theodora notices the unfinished plates left out and advises the family not to leave dirty dishes sitting overnight, warning that it will attract all kinds of animals. John responds that they're just on vacation, and besides, their maid had to stay back due to family issues. After leaving Theodora in the guest room, Esther discreetly tucks $300 under the lamp. The next morning, as John plays outside, he receives a call from his friend, Aki, but ignores it. Meanwhile, Esther discovers that Theodora has taken the money and left without any trouble. Feeling relieved, she cheerfully announces it to the family. However, Philip isn't pleased, viewing it as nothing more than a bribe. As John prepares fish for dinner, the doorbell rings. Moments later, Alba informs him that it's the woman from the previous night. Feeling uneasy, John opens the gate and lets Theodora inside. Theodora compliments their house, then she reveals that she got fired from her work due to her injury, as it posed a hygiene risk. She subtly implies that her predicament is a direct consequence of their actions and proposes becoming their maid for the summer. John is hesitant, but Esther hires her without further discussion. With Theodora now working as their maid, she begins unpacking her belongings in her assigned room. She casually offers Alba a but the young girl looks shocked and refuses, reminding her that there's no smoking in the house. Philip, however, dismisses his sister's concern and opens the window. Theodora then demonstrates how to use a lighter, which fascinates Alba, though she declines the offer to try it herself. Theodora asks Philip if he speaks French, but he shakes his head. Alba jumps in, saying their mother considers French useless. Theodora gently disagrees, pointing out that it's necessary when living in France. Later that night, John is awakened by a strange noise. He discovers a dead rodent in the entrance of the estate and is startled when Theodora suddenly appears beside him. Calmly, she remarks that rodents are a plague and should be exterminated. She hands him a rod, urging him to put the creature out of its misery, and after he did, he then turns back to find Theodora gone. The next day, Theodora places her lighter in Alba's room before starting her cleaning duties. As she vacuums, she notices John and Philip leaving with a bike. Suddenly, the vacuum stops. Esther has pulled the plug. Esther complains that the noise gives her a headache and instructs Theodora to clean the upstairs rooms instead, and adds that the shopping list for tonight's dinner will be in the kitchen and that John will take her to the store. Later, Theodora casually asks Alba if she'd like to help her cook, but Alba isn't interested. Noticing a Harry Potter book on the table, Theodora flips through it with a smile and playfully points at a character, calling a man in the book in French. She continues with other characters, labeling them with equally inappropriate words, such as, but Alba doesn't understand the meaning but repeats them. Theodora then looks at her warmly and admits that she likes her. After grocery shopping, the trio returns home. While folding laundry, Theodora casually asks Philip about his bike. He proudly tells her it's made of carbon and weighs only 7.4 kilograms. That evening, as Theodora slices meat for dinner, she suddenly starts eating it raw. She even teaches Alba how to cut the meat properly. Later, Aki and Cora, a family friend, arrive with their son. During their conversation, Esther fondly recalls her wedding day, mentioning how it poured with rain but still turned out to be a beautiful event. She adds that she feels incredibly fortunate. Philip, however, remarks sarcastically, "Not everyone is as lucky, like servers, for example." Aki interjects, telling Philip that his parents work hard for what they have. To shift the conversation, Esther asks Aki if he has read an article about pollen allergens written by her husband. Aki, a scientist like John, immediately grows serious. He offers his help if needed, but Esther is puzzled by his concern. When she later questions John about it, he dismisses her worries, saying there's nothing wrong and that she wouldn't care either way. The next day, the family takes a boat to a nearby beach. Philip films the outing and seems captivated by Theodora's beauty. Upon reaching the shore, everyone rushes into the water, except for Esther. Theodora notices and asks Esther why she isn't joining them, to which Esther simply replies, "The sea scares me." Later, Esther receives another call from her assistant and steps away to answer it. After finishing, she decides to sunbathe. Unbeknownst to her, Theodora discreetly steals Esther's phone. However, Alba catches her in the act but chooses not to say anything. When Esther realizes her phone is missing, she panics, insisting that she needs to stay in contact with her office. Theodora calmly offers to help, saying she knows where to find a store. The two leave the beach together. After purchasing a new phone, Esther immediately resumes her conversation with her assistant. Once the call ends, she shares a cigarette with Theodora. As they smoke, Esther confesses that despite having a good family, she sometimes wishes she could disappear. Theodora stays silent for a second and encourages Esther to disappear for some time and take a break from it all. That night, Esther joins John in bed. When he begins to kiss her, she stops him, saying she has already taken a sleeping pill, which greatly disappoints John, but he doesn't say anything. The next day, as Theodora cleans outside, she notices John preparing to take his bike out. Casually, she comments that his bike is made of carbon and weighs 7.4 kilograms. Impressed, John invites her to tag along for a ride. They stop to rest by the roadside, where Theodora plucks a fruit and eats it sensually in front of him. John watches her, unsettled but intrigued. Back at the estate, Esther notices her son getting unusually comfortable around Theodora. Shrugging it off, she returns to work when Alba suddenly confesses that she saw Theodora steal Esther's phone. Then Esther takes Alba to Theodora, who firmly denies the accusation. Frustrated, Alba runs away. Esther apologizes on behalf of her daughter. Later, Theodora scratches at her wound, just as Esther rushes over with a first aid kit. Feeling guilty, she asks Theodora if she'd like to have dinner with her, and even offers to lend her a dress. Theodora, smiling, accepts the invitation. At the restaurant, Esther tells Theodora that she has no right to be unhappy, considering she has everything anyone could ask for. Theodora responds, "Everyone has the right to be unhappy." And, with a concerned look, Theodora confesses that Alba is the one who stole Esther's phone and is currently hiding it in her closet. She suggests that maybe Alba is jealous because Esther is always preoccupied with work. She also requests Esther to not reveal this information to Alba and also asks her not to punish Alba for this. Esther, caught off guard, agrees and admits that Alba is always envious of everything. As dinner progresses, Esther comments that the dress fits Theodora better than it does on her and offers it to her as a gift. Theodora then suggests they go to a bar, and once the duo reaches the bar, Theodora begins introducing her friends to Esther and a tourist named Amber, who is visiting France on vacation. After some time, Esther finds herself standing alone when a handsome man named Lucian approaches her. He offers her a drink, and after some hesitation, she accepts but immediately finds it disgusting, which she isn't afraid to tell him in his face. Esther studies Lucian for a moment before asking if they've met before. She feels like she knows him. He denies it. As the night progresses, Esther and Lucian begin dancing closely, their chemistry undeniable. Later, the group decides to leave the bar and head to the beach. After much persuasion from Lucian, Esther agrees to join him in the water. As they wade into the sea, a shadowy figure swims on the surface before drowning, but never resurfaces. As dawn breaks, the group gathers and enjoys fresh meat. Esther remarks that the steak is delicious, unlike anything she ever had before. At some point, she looks around and asks where Amber is. The others exchange glances before simply telling her, she's gone. Esther and Theodora eventually return to the estate, and Esther tells her she had a great time. Outside, Esther spots Aki, along with his son with Alba, who tells Alba to inform her father to give him a call back before leaving. Later, at the restaurant, John vents to Theodora about his wife, complaining that she is selfish and self-centered. Theodora, in an almost calculated way, reassures him, saying that Esther is nothing without him, that John is the smart, hard-working one. Back at the estate, Esther finds her missing phone in Alba's closet. As she exits the room, Alba casually mentions something else. She saw Theodora take a pair of Esther's underwear from her closet. Esther tells Alba to stop lying, but feeling hurt, Alba runs away again, and Esther, once and for all, confronts John about the publication. He finally comes clean, admitting that his superior believe his research findings are fake and that he is about to be fired. Under immense stress, he accuses Esther of caring only about her own success, not his. Later that night, Theodora enters the guest room where Esther is sleeping. She offers her some lemonade and a slip of paper where Lucian has written about Theodora's beauty, saying he would love to meet her again. Meanwhile, Alba, feeling neglected, questions whether she can sleep with Philip tonight, but he refuses and shoos her away. The next morning, Esther runs away to be with Lucian and hops onto his bike, riding off into sunset. During breakfast, after serving the family, Theodora joins them when John asks her to sit down. She then asks John that her friends would like to visit her and if it is cool with him, and he agrees. However, when he asks her to pour the coffee, she simply places the flask beside him instead. Theodora allows her friends inside, and they sunbathe together. After a while, Cora arrives and tells John that she received a message from Esther. John reads the message about how Esther needed time to get away and asked Cora to look after the children. It turns out Cora has been cheating on Aki with John, which is why Aki has been repeatedly calling John, though he has been ignoring him. Cora accuses Theodora of taking advantage of John, but he brushes it off. As Cora is about to leave, she kisses him. At the same time, we see Esther enjoying herself with her young lover. That night, Theodora enters Alba's room and gently pats her head. Deprived of affection, Alba enjoys the gesture and asks for more. They chat about Harry Potter. Later at midnight, Philip sneaks a peek inside Theodora's room and notices she has very few clothes. He takes a picture but is caught in the act. Theodora simply calls him a perv. Embarrassed, he runs away and hops on his bike to cool off. Back at Lucien's place, Esther notices stacks upon stacks of meat inside a box, giving off a terrible smell. She questions him about it, but he brushes it off, saying they'll be used for barbecues. The next day, Theodora invites John to her friend Estelle's birthday party, but he declines, saying he needs to take care of the children. Meanwhile, Alba finally learns how to operate the lighter. Excited, she rushes to show her father, but he asks her to hand it over, saying it could be dangerous. Disappointed, she gives it to him. Esther and Lucienne arrive at a rundown apartment where Estelle's birthday party takes place. While there, a man approaches Esther and rambles about his life. She interrupts him, asking how he knows Estelle. He replies that she works at a hotel bar and makes excellent cocktails at La Fontaine. He also points out Lucien, revealing that he works there too. Esther's heart sinks. As the man bids her goodbye, she calls John, asking him to call her back. After inquiring about the bathroom, she steps inside, only for the sink to suddenly spurt blood. She rushes out, horrified, only to witness a woman devouring a man. Before she can react, Theodora stops her, revealing that she was never Esther's friend, nor was she ever a maid. Then, Lucien appears and attacks Esther, devouring her as the group joins in. Back at the estate, Esther and her friends are having fun in the pool when John interrupts, telling her she can't just invite guests over. She apologizes and promises it will be the last time. He walks away and encounters Cora, who seems to be leaving his house. John asks her to stay a little longer, but she, frustrated with Theodora, tells him to throw her out and then leaves. Frustrated by the noise from above, John climbs up a ladder to check the attic. However, Theodora and her friends arrive and kill him with the same rod John used to kill the rodent. Sometime later, Philip arrives at the estate and spots Cora's car. Then he notices his sister with Theodora. Once inside, he microwaves some meat and begins eating, only to find a ring inside, realizing he may have just consumed either his father or mother. Meanwhile, Theodora and her group leave the estate, taking Alba with them, and with that, the story ends.